Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session from the Charity for Civil Servants for Carers Week. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Adam from Cruse Bereavement, and he's going to be talking to us for a little while just about the subject of carers experiencing loss. Before we get into the subject with Adam, we are just going to highlight a couple of little things for you in terms of housekeeping. So Adam is going to have some time at the end of this session to answer any questions or maybe to look at some of the comments that you would like to share. To do that, just use along the top of your screen right now. If you take a look, you should see a little button called Q&A. So all you need to do to submit your question or comment is click on that and add whatever you'd like to the chat. Please do note, if you want to anonymize your question, if you don't want to see your name attached to that on the public screen, then just press that button as well within that Q&A box and it'll anonymize it for you. For anybody who would benefit from closed captions, if you would be helpful to have that on the screen, you can do that. It doesn't show up for anybody else, but if along the top of your screen you see the little buttons marked more, press on those three buttons and you'll have the option to add live caption, closed captions to your screen only, if that would help you. At some point through this session, my colleague Becky, who's behind the scenes today, is going to pop also a link into the Q&A box for feedback. We would love to get your feedback on this session. We really want to hear what you found beneficial, maybe some of the things that you plan to implement, and also if you have any ideas for future sessions that would be helpful. So please do look out for that link, or you can use this QR code to complete our feedback. For now, I am going to get out of the way. I'm going to bring Adam onto the screen, and we're really looking forward to this session today, Adam. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, Lisa. I'll just bring up my PowerPoint so we can all see as we work through. So my name is Adam Page. I am involved with Cruse Bereavement Support. I've been a volunteer there for 25 years. I've also worked for them for a period of time, which was about 14 years. And I currently work for Baby Loss Charity. But my world is working with bereavement and grieving people. But this talk specifically today is about my experiences from a carer's perspective. Now, I've been a carer myself. My mom has lived with me for a number of years before she unfortunately died recently. But I've worked in care homes. I've trained care home staff. I've helped volunteers at work with carers. So I'm very familiar in that environment from a personal and professional perspective. And what I kind of hope to do today is, Lisa has very kindly covered a lot of the practicalities for me there, so I don't need to go over these. I'm going to skip past this slide. I'm going to come back to the stay safe one, though, in a moment. I'm going to tell you what I hope to do with you today, and then I'm going to go back over that rule for you. For now, I'm going to just give you a little acronym. I'll bring it up on the screen here for you. Ignore the silly graphics and things as it spins around, does all that. I don't know why it does that. Sometimes I do these things. I just like to play. But for now, I just want you to focus on what I hope you get from this short session. I want you to understand at the end of this that self-care is the single biggest ingredient that makes the difference when you are grieving, whether you're a carer, whether you're dealing with a bereavement, whether you're dealing with the build up to the death or putting them into a care home, all of the stresses involved. The thing that makes the difference, the underpinning value quality of self-care really does make all the difference. And that's going to be a central message to what I'm talking about. I want to, in this short time, help you understand what grief is, because most people misunderstand it. There is something called anticipatory grief, which many carers often and will experience. Grief itself is confusing, and I want to almost just give you a clear definition. Obviously, I'm going to take the carer's perspective, and I really want to look at what I'm talking about through the lens of being a carer before somebody unfortunately passes away, before we maybe put somebody into a care home, or unfortunately after the point at which they have actually died. There's lots of loss for carers. It's not just about bereavement. Yes, that's what I do a lot of the time, but I really want to focus on all the losses that people can have within their elderly world. There's so many losses and steps, so much more than just a bereavement, and I'm going to talk about that as well. I will talk about some knowledge. I'm going to give you one of the most famous up-to-date bereavement models because it fits very well with a carer's grief journey and anticipatory grief as well. And skills. I'll give you couple of skills, just a couple of tips and advice about how we manage people when they're grieving. I was waiting to make sure that a few more people were in before I give a very important message. What I talk about today may give you a little bit of a wobble. It might upset you a little bit. You might find that you feel a bit emotional. That's understandable. That's normal. If that happens to some of you or many of you, that isn't a surprise. It's okay. Please just keep your feet on the ground, take a breath, keep yourself grounded. You don't need to have your camera on. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to ask any questions. If what I talk about today really does affect you, if you find that it's still bothering you tomorrow and at the weekend, then please seek support. Please, you could contact Cruse Bereavement support. You could use any of the numerous support services that you have within the civil service. Speak to a friend, speak to a family member. Just seek support afterwards if needed. So let's try and work our way very quickly through this thing called Sucks. I've got about 40 minutes left now. We've got everything set up. Let's see what I can teach you. It will go at a fairly fast pace. I'll hit you with lots of different things. I'll tell you a bit about Cruse Bereavement Support. It's a valid organisation if you are managing a bereavement, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to focus on carers. Just want to make you aware there's that organisation out there. It'll probably appear in the chat as well at some point. You will get a copy of these slides, but if you are dealing with a bereavement at any point in your life, it's just an organisation which is a bit of a go-to. There's lots of numbers there telling you how wonderful Cruse is. I'm not going to waste time doing that. Time is precious with what we've got. I want to get on and start with this. You helping you understand what grief is in my acronym of Sucks. Let's start with saying very clearly, it's not just about bereavement. I've said that already. Let me just nail this very clearly. It really isn't. We only use the word grief and grieving when somebody's died, and that is a mistake. We grieve when life is disrupted, when things change, when we get a dementia diagnosis, when we're told that a family member doesn't have long to live or has cancer, when we have to give up our job or go part-time and take on a caring role. When life changes, there is an ending of sorts. There is a loss of kind. Something changes. We lose the stability that we had beforehand. Now, the top third of this slide, I've deliberately tailored to giving you a bit more of a carer flavour, the kind of things that we experience within that carer's world, the things that come to an end. Retirement dreams change. We can't go on holiday because we can't get the travel insurance anymore. Things like mobility and things connected to physical and mental health are eroding or going away, especially with things like dementia. The remaining ones on this slide are just to remind you that loss can come in many forms, not just as a carer, and grief can follow any of these losses. Whenever we feel that disruption, whenever we are put on an emotional roller coaster, a period of adjustment where we have to get used to the fact that stability has been brutally taken away from us, when things have changed, that's when we grieve. So grief is the process. It's a self-regulatory process. It's the process that occurs and happens when things change in our lives. So we can use this word grief for so many things, so many different areas and things that come to an end in our world, such as what you've just seen on the screen. And the biggest problem with grieving is that people don't acknowledge it. People don't acknowledge that we are in a period of difficulty. We are in a period of transition. Becoming a carer and adapting to that new world and understanding and learning new things and visiting the GP more often and having to argue or deal with consultants or a barrage of information about what that illness or that cancer or that dementia means to us brings so much confusion and change. And often we just don't want it. We don't want grief to be kicking in. We don't want to be feeling anxious or confused or overwhelmed or lost. We just want to be a carer or deal with the fact that something's changed. It's never simple, and we want it to be simple. And that is always a problem. Whether I'm dealing with people, it doesn't matter whether somebody's died or there's just been a massive change in their life, there is always resistance to it. There is always, this isn't happening. This isn't how it should be. I don't want this. This is unfair. There is always that inner battle of, I just don't want this. And that doesn't help. What helps is that we accept that life has changed, that we accept that we can't do these things anymore. We're not going to have the retirement we wanted or go on holiday. We have to accept our new reality, because life is not fair, and life throws things at us which are not fair. The dice just rolls, and some people are carers and some people aren't. But the grief that we are left with is a mess. It is difficult. It is like being on a roller coaster in the dark. We are on a journey, a process that we didn't want, but we have to endure, embrace it. And it's uncomfortable, and it's messy, and it's not nice. And that leads to one very important rule. I gave you that word earlier when I talked about what I want you to learn from this session. And I gave you that word sucks, but it has a double meaning. I want you to understand and embrace the idea that the grief journey does suck, but it's not pleasant, but it's horrible. And we actually need to endure it and accept it and get on board with the idea that it sucks. And that is why when talking to other people, we don't want to hit them with euphemisms and cliches or try to make them feel better. The reality is grief is unpleasant and horrible, and we don't like it. A second rule, and I put it in yellow so it's nice and shiny for you. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. When we're grieving, whether it's adapting towards being a carer, whether it's dealing with that slow erosion of personality that dementia prevents us with, whether it's a terminal illness and we see their mobility eat away at their physical health and their ability to do things with their hands or their body, whatever it is, how we react to that, how we deal with that is individual to us. If you're part of a family and you're caring as a group, but you're grieving, anticipatory grieving for one person, everybody grieves in their own individual way. Some people don't face that grief. Some people pull away from it and avoid it and say, I don't want to do this. They don't get emotional. They don't think about it. Some people focus on being practical and just being a carer. And they just focus on being a practical and doing the role like a job as best as they can. And they take it on and have a professional approach to it. Other people struggle. Other people do get emotional. Other people break down or feel guilty or get angry with the person who they're caring for, or with themselves, or with other family members who aren't pulling their weight, or whatever it is that's going on with the GPs, with hospitals. So many things to feel frustrated and guilty and angry about. The point is, there is no right or wrong way to grieve. And I just really want you to absorb that, to hear that. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. Do what you need to do. Do what works for you. Whether you're dealing with the death of a loved one, whether you're dealing with being a carer, just do what you need to do. And don't compare yourself to other people, because that's just pointless and it doesn't help. I keep mentioning anticipatory grief. I just want to be clear what I mean by that. They're not dead yet. We know, we fear, we are prepared for maybe the possibility that they're going to die. Maybe it's clear cut. Maybe we know we've only got a short period of time. Maybe we don't know, and we still have an element of hope that they're going to live longer than expected with that cancer, or the dementia isn't going to crumble into something where we lose them. Anticipatory grief is the opportunity, the possibility that maybe we do some grief work before they actually die. And some people choose to do that. Some people to choose to engage with grief work. And I'll talk about what grief work actually is in a moment. But other people don't choose to do anticipatory grieving and don't engage with anything because, as I've said, maybe they're focused on just being a carer. There is no right or wrong way to grieve, but to give it a name, to say that there is a possibility that we do grief work before they've actually died, can sometimes reassure people. It explains why they feel so chaotic and unstable, because they've already started to grieve. And it also explains why we feel differently once somebody has died. Because once somebody has died, maybe we feel relieved. Maybe we feel there isn't much grief work to do following that bereavement. And that's normal, because if we've done anticipatory grief work before they've died, maybe we're done and dusted and have a lot of the work done. And we're not too bad when they die. And then we compare ourselves to somebody else, a sibling maybe, who isn't prepared, who hasn't done an anticipatory grief. And that person is at the beginning of their grief journey. And we compare ourselves to them and we feel guilty, or we think, why do we feel okay about it and they're struggling? It's because of the nature of anticipatory grief work and whether or not people have invested in doing it. It's not a requirement. It's not essential. I don't expect people to do it. I'm highlighting that there's just an opportunity to, and some people take it and some people don't. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. You just do what works for you. But giving it a label might be helpful for some of you. How long are we going to grieve for? I don't know. If everybody has 100 hours of grief work to do, they're going to just dip in and out and chip away at it. Some people do grief work before they've even died, like I've said. But everybody presses pause on their grief. We don't just do it all in one go. If we have 100 hours to do, we don't just blitz it and do it straight away. We press pause. We go back to work. We function. We press pause and we step out of that difficult grief experience, whether we're coping with a divorce, whether we're coping with being with a carer, whether we're coping with putting our relative into a care home, a bereavement, a loss of a limb. It doesn't matter. We pause. We don't do it full on. So that pause button is a really important ingredient to a healthy and productive grief journey. I'm going back to self-care now. Self-care, being able to say no to people, being able to press pause on your own grief and be able to step into your caring role, or go back to work, or be strong for family members, or finish off doing your A-levels, whatever it is, that pause button is really helpful. And it's part of having good self-care. We need to be able to say, I'm taking a break. I'm taking time out from this. I'm saying no to that person. I can't do that much at work. I'm stepping back from responsibilities. I'm going to take an hour off and go for a walk. I'm going to be kind to myself. It's all about a pause button. It's all about being able to say, not now. I need to put myself first. We need that as grievers. We need that as carers. The pause button is essential. It's part of self-care. So let me show you a model. And this is a very modern model which often gets thrown around in the world of people like me who work with bereavement extensively and grief. Now, we can apply this to the grief journey. We can apply this to anticipatory grief, and that's why I've chose this model to show you. Now, I'm going to hopefully you can see me on the screen. Obviously, you can see the PowerPoint. I'm going to show you two very visual props to help you remember this model, because sometimes you put a model up on a screen like this, it's a bit wordy, it looks a bit academic, and people forget it. I'm going to do something a bit silly to help you remember this model and simplify it as best as I can. I'm going to show you two teddy bears, because these two teddy bears represent the two jobs that grieving people are doing. Whether it's anticipatory grief, whether it's after a bereavement, doesn't matter. When we grieve, we do two jobs. And that's what this model tells us. But the simple way of remembering it are these two teddy bears, okay? We've got a dinosaur and we've got a robot. And these are the two jobs. In simple terms, the two jobs are to figure out and make sense of the past. And the other job is to adapt and change and learn to live with a new future. Dinosaurs are in the past. So we go into the past, we look at the time that we spent with that person, possibly up until their diagnosis, possibly up until the point with their dementia or their illness where we lost their personality or their mobility, possibly up until the moment that they died. We are looking at that chapter that has come to an end with their life. And what we do as grievers is we go over it. We think about and memorize and talk about the times before they got dementia, before they got cancer, because that moment in their life has come to an end, hasn't it? It's come to a close. So we need to grieve for that. So we need to go back over it, talk about it, reminisce about it, maybe share memories, and park it and write a chapter that summarizes what that time in our lives meant. Now, as I've said, the ultimate ending of that chapter or book is going to be when they die, but we can start going into the past and reminiscing and talking about who they were before they die as part of our anticipated grief work. So the goal is to give meaning to the past, to summarize it, to tell a story, to write a narrative. This is who they were. But there's one real difficulty when we try and do this. When we go into the past and we try and do that job, We get upset. We have an emotional reaction. We feel sad. We miss what we can't have back. We maybe feel a bit guilty or feel angry that that has come to an end. We miss it. And then we're grieving for the fact that all our future plans have probably changed as well, because we're not going to buy a camper van and travel around the UK now. We can't do that because of the illness, because of the cancer, because of the dementia, whatever it is. Now, I know that I'm being a bit biased here. I know that in some ways I'm talking about elderly people, or it seems like I am, but I'm very aware that the caring role and the disruption of a person's normal life can happen at any age. The caring role, of course, can come into looking after children, young people, young adults, middle-aged people, all ranges, all ages. So when I talk about that grief response of having to deal with a future that we didn't want and having to summarize a past, it could be at any age, any caring role that we're dealing with. So the job, let me say it again, of the past is to give it meaning. But when we try and give it meaning, we get really upset. So actually what we experience as grievers is a large emotional fog, an overwhelming feeling of lots of different strong emotions swirling around, and we feel drained by those emotions. And those emotions are difficult, maybe, and they're confusing and scary, and we don't like it because grief sucks, doesn't it? Grief hurts and it's unpleasant, and it's often because of that emotional fog that we feel so unpleasant. But it's normal, it's all part of it. And you know what helps with that emotional fog? All together now, self-care. If we're good at self-care, if we have a little bit of resilience, if we know how to look after ourselves when we do feel a little bit emotional, if we know how to pamper ourselves afterwards to replenish our energy because we feel exhausted from having a good cry or punching a cushion because we're fed up of being a carer and we hate this role and we just want to release some anger, we need some self-care with that. We need to be kind to ourselves. It's okay to feel emotional. It's okay to feel occasionally a little bit angry about the situation you're in, or sad, or lonely, or frustrated. This is all part of it. And we just need to sit with it and be with it and release it and forgive ourselves for it and be kind to ourselves and have a nice cup of tea and watch a Game of Thrones if we can. If you can get that hour where you can watch something and give yourself a break. Sometimes we do that with the person we love. Sometimes we watch a TV show and we laugh together and we share that memory. It's all about being in the past, maybe. Remember when you used to like and watch, I don't know, Downton Abbey was my mom's favourite. I've watched it a million times. But that's the past. Let me just mention the future, because this is a big one as well. The future job, the teddy bear in the future. When we're grieving, we have to think about the future as well. Even before they've died, we might be thinking about what will happen afterwards. Will we plan a funeral? Are you going to do that? Have you done that? What will happen to the house, the finances, going back to work? Will work change? Does your role change? Being a carer, often people, that becomes their world and their job and their identity. And when that ends, ultimately, when somebody has died or they're putting their loved one in a care home, there begins that transition of like, well, who am I now? I've got lots of equipment in the house. What do I do with it? All these issues about adjusting to that new future now become grief work as well. And we can do both these jobs before they die. We can do both these jobs while we are anticipatory grieving. We can, whilst they're still alive, share and talk about the past and plan and think about the future. Or maybe we don't do those jobs because, as I've said, we don't do anticipatory grief. And maybe both these jobs just kick in ultimately at the moment when somebody dies and there is a bereavement. Maybe only then do we start to think about who were they? What did we do together? How did they die? And give meaning to that whole life story and time that we had with them. But often with things like caring, as I say, there's chapters. There's different moments where things come to an end steadily over time. It's not one big clear-cut ending. It's not a diagnosis and then they die. There are so many endings along that journey as we lose certain parts of their physical health, their mental health, dementia, whatever it is. There are lots of little mini goodbyes where we draw a line and we can't return. And we may or may not grieve at those various losses as they occur. So you've got the slide as a reminder of what this model is. It's called the dual process model. You don't need to know that. You can see that there is an oscillation between the two, and that's really important. We swing like a pendulum between the past and the future. And grief makes us feel crazy like that. Grief makes us feel that we're bouncing all over the place. And sometimes we can be sitting there thinking about the life we had with them. And then other times we can be thinking about a future thing or life without them and what that might feel like or what we're having to do to change. Often ex-carers struggle with going back to work or what their job role looks like or whether they restart a career or all kinds of things like that, or whether they move house, etc., etc. A huge dilemma for many people who are carers is in the future, way off in the future, but whether they're entitled to meet somebody else or form a new relationship. That can be a huge futuristic job that many ex-carers struggle with, understandably, if it was a partner they're caring for example. So an oscillation, a bit like Jekyll and Hyde, a bit like having a split personality. Sometimes we get pulled into the past, sometimes we get pulled into the future. But you know what else we do? We press pause. And let's bring back in what I said earlier. We give ourselves a break all of the time. We don't grieve in the past and the future constantly. There are plenty of times, the majority of the time, where we just don't do grief work, where we press pause and we give ourselves a break and we just function and be in the moment and do what we need to do as carers or grievers or parents or whatever it is. We press pause a lot. And that pause button, without it, we'd probably drown in our grief, wouldn't we? We'd probably be overwhelmed by it. We need a good pause button. And I'm going to say it again. What helps us have a good pause button is being good at self-care, setting boundaries, making time for ourselves, pausing for us, pausing for our needs is important. So I've said a lot about what grief is. I've given you a model. So I've given you a bit of knowledge. I've helped explain and understand hopefully what grief is for you. I said I wanted to give you some skills. I want to give you some skills and tips and ideas about how to support people who are grieving. So maybe you're a manager, maybe you're supporting somebody who is a carer, who is dealing and grieving because they've had a bereavement. Any number of scenarios here. Maybe they're just going through a divorce. Maybe a relationship has come to an end. Remember, grief is universal in lots of areas. But for carers, maybe they're anticipatory grieving and you'll manage them. Maybe you're a carer yourself. Maybe you're trying to support a friend or a colleague. These are just some tips and ideas about how to do that. And I'm going to give you what is hopefully a little memorable acronym, a little prompt, a little memory, 5-letter word to help remind you of key things that you can do when people are grieving. Now, not when they press pause, but when they are grieving, when they are doing grief work, when they are in the past or the future, when they are clearly dwelling on the impact of this person dying, or they're dealing with the fact that they're becoming a carer, or they're dealing with the fact that they're putting a loved one into a care home, any one of these many stepping stones along the caring journey. When they're struggling, remember lanes, and we try, if possible, to do these things with them. Firstly, just listen to what they have to say. It's very easy to keep talking, and a lot of people will keep talking and say too much. There is a need to continue the conversation and say clever things like they're in a better place, or it's for the best. We say all these rubbish things. It's because we're still in conversation mode. And what I'd like you to do is to change gear and slow down and remember that people who are grieving don't need you to have a conversation. When they're struggling in that moment, back off and shut up and just listen and let them talk. Rearrange the word listen, it's spelled silent. A nice way of remembering you to shut up. I train people, I train Cruse volunteers, I train counsellors, and even they still say too much. They try too hard. They feel obliged to say something. And I'm saying you really don't have to. It is important, but you back off and just let them feel and talk. That is a wonderful gift to give somebody who's struggling. Just shut up. And what's going to happen? I can predict the future now. They're probably going to go into the past a little bit. Let's bring back the dinosaur, little Dino. They're going to go into the past, and that emotional fog that I talked about earlier is going to surface because it is an inevitable consequence, an inevitable symptom that they are going to feel something. And when they feel something, it's probably going to be uncomfortable. It's probably going to suck. They're not going to enjoy it. It's going to be unpleasant, maybe. Not always, but maybe it is. So maybe you notice that they are struggling a little bit emotional, probably maybe feeling sad, maybe a tear runs down their cheek. In that moment, in that crucial moment when somebody shows that vulnerability to you, I want you to do something different, because what everybody does is we rush in to make them feel better. We give them a hug. We change the subject. We say something to try and cheer them up. We hit them with a cliche or euphemism such as, at least they're in a better place, or things will get better, or whatever it is. And I want you to remember what I said at the beginning. Grief sucks. This is difficult. It does hurt. And it's not about trying to make them feel better or trying to fix it in any way at all. I actually want you to just acknowledge that this hurts. I'd like you to say grief sucks. I don't want you to make their feeling go away. And the A in lanes is to remind you of that. I'm just going to have a quick drink of water. Hold on. I talk a lot. I talk fast. And if I don't hydrate myself, I don't want to start coughing too much. Forgive me for that. Accept feeling. So this is to remind you, that little voice in your head, lanes, my voice saying LANES, let them be upset. It's okay. This is what grieving people do. People who are struggling as carers, it's okay for them to get upset. They probably feel bad about it. They're probably like, I shouldn't be upset. I'm not the person who's dying. It is okay for you to be upset. It is okay for carers to be upset. We really want to validate. And you know what? There is no better gift than allowing somebody who's grieving, for whatever that grief is, there's no better gift than just giving them a little bit of time and space where you just listen to them and hear them and let them be emotional. And they'll thank you for it. They'll say, oh my God, you're such a good listener. And you'll think, I didn't say anything. Because that's what good listeners do. They shut up. So if people get upset, this is what I want you to say to them. Take your time. It's okay. No rush. Say as much as you want to. You're grieving. I understand. This is a difficult time for you. Keep going. Say as much as you want. Just literally allow them to hold that thought and feeling and do what they need to do. That's what I'd like you to do. You can normalise, which basically means you say something like, grief sucks. So you can actually say to people, you're grieving. I know they're not dead yet, but you're anticipatory grieving. You're dealing with the fact that you know they're going to die, and that's not easy for you. That's understandable. There's a word for it, anticipatory grief. Grief sucks. This isn't pleasant. This is a difficult time in your life. Yes, you feel like you're going crazy. That's normal. You feel anxious. You've got lots of emotions. You feel more emotional than you've ever felt before. Welcome to grief. This is what it's like. This is how it is. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it sucks. Normalise. Tell them that this is not unusual. E, empower. Encourage them, support them to do whatever they need to do for them. If I'm speaking to you as a carer, do what you need to do. You don't need to listen to everyone else. You know your situation and your loved one better than anybody. So do what you feel is right, because you have to take responsibility for decisions and things that happen. If you're grieving for somebody, do what works for you. If you're dealing with a bereavement, if you're struggling with something that's come to an end, do what you feel like doing. The introverts probably want to be on their own. They probably want to just like lock themselves away or go for a walk. Whereas extroverts want to talk about it and have a hug and everything. And often you get different people doing different things. The introverts are trying to be on their own and the extroverts won't let them. So we've all got to grieve in our own unique way. I'm going to say it again. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. So that means that all family members dealing with a grief journey, a bereavement, whatever it is, all family members need to do their own thing and do what works for them. And that is why some choose to do anticipated grief and why some of them don't, because there's no right or wrong way. When somebody eventually dies, what do we do with the possessions? Some people want to clear them out straight away. They want to get a skip and send them all to charity shop. Other people want to take their time. Other people, it's the last thing that they do. They do everything else, and the last thing they do is deal with the possessions. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. We just do what we need to do to adapt to the fact that life has changed. So empower people. Don't tell them your own story. Don't give them your own experience. Don't compare them to somebody else that you knew that is in a care scenario. Every care scenario is individual and unique. There's lots of shared troubles and stresses and strategies that you can learn. And attending and going to things like care meetings and exploring care websites and using the support of the neighbourhood team that you've got around you, all those kind of things obviously are helpful. But ultimately, do what works for you. Be selfish. Do what works for you and what you feel is right. And I think one of the huge decisions that people will struggle with is around ultimately whether or not somebody gets put into a care home. That's a hugely difficult grief moment for so many people. It's a very difficult decision to make. People will often delay it as long as they can. Why wouldn't you? People do delay it. But a lot of people eventually, it ends with having to put somebody in a care home or somebody having a medical event like a fall or something like that, where people then end up in a hospital and then end up in a care home or in a hospice or something like that. It's a big, big moment and event when we have to do something like that. And we want to acknowledge, but it is a big loss. And there's a lot of grief for people when they do that, and a lot of feeling maybe angry or guilty, of course. And we just want to acknowledge and normalise that. But people need to do what works for them, and we want to empower them as much as we can. Finally, signposting. I won't say too much about signposting other than, there are organisations out there. From a bereavement perspective, which is obviously more my specialty, there are lots of bereavement organisations. But, from a caring point of view, the big carers organisations and charities and things that you can approach, they have bereavement support options as well. So you might want to explore those if that's what you're going through. The biggest transition for ex-carers having had a bereavement is who they are, and actually letting go of that carers community, because they've been such a part of a carers community for some time. They feel a part of it. They enjoy the people. They've got connections and relationships. And now they feel that because they're not a carer, they have to say goodbye to that. So how you do that, or whether you drag it out for a little bit, or how you maintain connections in a different way, that's something you need to manage, isn't it? But signposting for people with anticipated grief, lots of support, maybe via the neighbourhood team, but things like Alzheimer's UK and Macmillan and stuff like that, lots of support as well accessible there. So a few signposting options. These are just linked for bereavement. So the main one would be the one at the bottom that gives a lot of bereavement services on the Cruse website there. I'm aware that I've probably got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to just spend the last 5 minutes saying a couple of things about what to say, what not to say, and then I'm going to just finish by saying a little bit about self-care. So when it comes to phraseology, generally, if you're trying to be clever or trying to make a person feel better, I would probably suspect that that's a bad idea. It's generally, there is no phrase that helps a person, that makes them feel better. Carers just want practical things. If you've got something to tell them that generally is going to help them, like, do you know that there's this device that does that? Or that, that kind of thing is always welcomed. But ultimately trying to make them feel better, there's not a lot we can say. A lot of people say things like, you're doing a brilliant job and all that kind of stuff. But often you feel you're not. So it's the same with bereavement. There isn't really many good things that you can say. I think what's important is we just acknowledge it. This is why I really like Grief Sucks. It literally says, I get it. This is difficult for you. As a carer, to say to people, it's hard. What you're doing is difficult. People often don't like things like you're a hero or you're super strong or you're a soldier and all that kind of stuff, because people don't feel that way. Just to simply acknowledge in its purest forms, it's not easy being a carer. It is difficult at times. And at times, if you're full on, you might be exhausted. You might be kept up throughout the night and all sorts of things. So just acknowledge how difficult it is. And it's the same for a bereavement. When somebody's died, this sucks. This is not easy. Please accept my condolences. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say, but try and avoid all the other ones in red. It gets easier. No, it doesn't. It might get worse. You just don't know. We have good days and bad days. It's all over the place. It's a roller coaster in the dark. Oh, I don't know how you're feeling. People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear their perspective or that they don't understand. And certainly as carers, many ex-carers will say and will feel that they are relieved that it has finally come to an end. They will be glad in some way that the suffering is over. Now, they might feel that. They might say it to somebody else. And they're certainly going to feel guilty for feeling that way. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to say to a carer as their manager or a friend, at least it's over. And at least they're not suffering anymore. We don't want to say that because even if they are feeling it, it is not your place to assume that or say it because you think it's going to make them feel better. Now, if they say it or you're saying it to yourself, then that's okay. We can then normalize it and validate it and say, yeah, I understand you feel that way and it's not unusual, it's not normal. But we do feel that because a lot of people genuinely do feel at least it's come to an end. But many don't. Many people wished that they'd had longer. Many people wish that they could have kept it going. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. I'm just giving permission to the ones who do feel that it's okay, that it's over. I'm giving permission that that's normal, and I hear that a lot. I really do. You don't know how they're feeling, so don't say, I know just how you feel. Let's move on to self-care. As I finish off the last couple of minutes or so, I just want to finish off my tidy, snazzy acronym of SUCS. I've done skills. I've helped you understand what grief is. I've talked a lot about the carer's role, and we've done a bit of knowledge with that theory. Let me finish with self-care. And as I said at the beginning, self-care is the ingredient that all grievers need, that everybody needs. For me, self-care is the attitude and behaviours that are part of being resilient, having strong mental health. All humans need good self-care, but we need more self-care when life is difficult and it's a little bit troublesome. When we are having wobbles because somebody's died or we're a carer or we're dealing with that other carer loss along the journey. Self-care is what keeps us going. Self-care is what helps us get through these things. And self-care, when supporting other people, if we're listening to other people as a manager and we're listening to their stories, we need to do self-care for ourselves. But I want to focus on self-care for people who are grieving. And there's a slide here that highlights a couple of things. I'm just going to pick out a couple of things that matter. Sleep underpins health, underpins how we feel about things. And as a carer, that sleep can be obliterated. But doing what we can to sleep. For example, people who wait for the person they're caring for and then they rush around the house and do all the chores, rather than have a nap, have some sleep, use those moments to catch up. People feel guilty about sleeping, but using as many options as possible to create more sleep for yourself. It's not an easy one. I know that. And there are certain carer scenarios where getting good quality sleep is virtually impossible. I know that. But if you can in any way work on your sleep and improve it, that's a good thing. Human connection, staying connected and feeling reconnected with people as a carer or when you're grieving is very important. Now, it might be that you say, well, I don't go out, I don't socialise, but you try and maintain connections via social media or having a Zoom meeting or a little chat or a phone call. Maintaining human connection is really important, whether it's with other carers as part of a community or whether it's with existing friendships and family members. Proactively find things that you can do to maintain a connection. Have a routine where possible. Having a routine and a structure and doing things when you're grieving really helps. It helps when you're a carer as well. But when you're grieving and you've lost that carer structure and you've lost the getting up and giving medication and doing everything as part of a routine, build a new routine. Build a new routine so that you can feel that stability and structure again with your new life moving forward. And if you're an ex-carer, that new world of not being a carer is a complete new desert where you're rebuilding everything, as I've said before. So that's a huge job, isn't it? So yeah, Self-care is about thinking about these things that matter to you, thinking about making choices, having activities and doing things that nurture you and support you, whether it is watching Game of Thrones or doing a jigsaw that helps you just switch off your brain momentarily and give you a little bit of a break. Do that jigsaw, watch that TV program. Maybe you just need to go outside and hit something with a baseball bat because you want to get some anger and frustration out. Maybe you want to just go and do an ice bath or something, and sit in the bath full of ice. I'm joking here because I don't care what it is. Find an activity that nurtures and nourishes you. It might just be music, playing an instrument, watching TV, sleeping, going for a walk, doing a bit of gardening, anything that gives you a break as a carer or anything that gives you a break as a bereaved person. I'll stop banging on about self-care. That's my final thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you about with self-care. But I'm very aware of the time, and I wanted to kind of like steer it in so we get here at 1:45, which is I've done. Bang on, brilliant. That's excellent. I'm gonna I've said lots of things, obviously, and I've said them all very quickly. You might want me to say a little bit more about something. You might have a specific question. I will pass it over and see what comes up.
Adam, you have said lots of things and you have said them wonderfully and beautifully and compassionately. And I think that's coming through from the comments that we are seeing coming through.
Right. Okay, good.
It's been an incredible session packed with really practical advice about supporting ourselves, what to expect and supporting other people. But what's been really beautiful as well in the comments is we've got lots of people just sharing their experiences. And I hope if you have shared your experience in the Q&A, if you're one of the people who's popped your own personal experience in, I hope you've been feeling lots of hearts have been coming your way. Everybody's kind of responding to those because we're all sort of seeing ourselves connected in this. So Adam, let me share with you some of these comments and a couple of questions as well. Sure. So I'm just going to go right down to the bottom again. We've got lots and lots coming in, so I don't want to miss out any.
Yeah, we'll do what we can.
And yeah, just to say to folks, we do have a little bit of time here, so if you still got a question you want to ask, pop it in even now.
Please do.
This was an early on comment which I thought was very, very powerful and immediately got a lot of love from the audience. This is an individual who has been a carer, is grieving the loss in bereavements, 2 family members within the last year.
Wow.
And actually, one of the things that she speaks about grieving is the loss even of now her identity. So the loss of those people and their connection in her life, but the loss of her identity even as a carer, sort of feeling, she says, I feel adrift. Although rationally I know that my family gave me a very good foundation in life with lots of love. Is that typical for lots of people, especially carers?
Yeah, absolutely. And to frame it in what I've been saying already is our identity that was there before we became a carer is slowly dismantled. Whether it's a career path or we're a sociable person who we connect with, it's slowly dismantled possibly the longer we become a carer or how vividly we have to go into that caring role. There's various factors, but that erosion of identity is the initial experience. And then if we've been immersed in that for quite some time and we feel like that so many avenues are now closed, we're not going to go back to our career, we're not going to see those friends again, we really do feel we are adrift. And that is the word I hear all the time. I'm lost at sea. I'm a boat without a sail. One lady said to me, I'm in a desert. I'm just sitting on a deck chair in a desert and I just don't even know what direction to go in. So it's such a common experience. And we just simply have to take time to rebuild what that new identity is, because there's going to be one out there, but you've got a clean slate. You can do a lot of things, and a lot of people will drift into all sorts of things that they've never even thought of doing before. So take your time, start a journal, explore ideas, be experimental. Nothing's off the table. Look at your finances, look at your situation, and just give it time. But it's very real.
Oh, thank you, Adam. We've got another comment. So this is from a bereavement from a little bit, it's not a long time ago, but sort of within the last 5 years. But this individual says they feel like they're still in denial about the loss because at the time they didn't know how to process it, or perhaps didn't find the support that they need. But additionally, at the time of the loss of dad, they were also then caring for mum. So actually the last few years have not really allowed a lot of time to just process that. What should people think about in that regard in terms of processing a loss, even if it's been a little while ago?
Yeah. So what we've got there, again, bringing in what I talked about earlier, is a use of the pause button. You've said the classic thing there. I had to care for somebody else, which meant you press pause. So your own grief, that 100 hours, which is, a made up figure, it doesn't mean anything. But let's say you've got 100 hours of grief work to do, because you press pause, because you're doing something else, because you're, doing other things, you don't get round to it. So people always, very common, will end up not starting their grief for some time. And then they begin to recognize that, hold on for a minute, I didn't really do that grief work, did I? So the first step is an awareness of, I didn't do the grief work I should have done. I did press pause. I probably need to do it now, is where we then are at. And how do we do that? I'm going to give you one very simple thing, is use the model I've given you. Get 2 pieces of paper, put the past and the future, and go back and think about the relationship that you had with both those people, and have a piece of paper for each one. It might become a journal because there's lots in there, and deliberately spend time reflecting on who they were, what they taught you, what you did with them, the memories you've got, how they died. Write that story literally, and think about it and spend time. So just, you've delayed doing grief work, but you can still do it. You can catch up.
Great. What a great idea that is. And a really lovely comment that's come in here from someone who really has expressed so many changes all happening. So I'm going to try and summarize this a little bit, but
Sure.
this person went from being a full-time employment and a full-time carer towards then an end-of-life prognosis for the parent that she was caring for.
Yeah.
So we're still in that stage at the moment. It seems like mum is still here, but experiencing that anticipatory grief, then also having to sell the parents' house, maybe even just furniture and things there that stirred up memories of childhood or of parents in times past. Lots of different changes, lots of different kind of parting with things all through that process. And this person acknowledges it's going to be again impactful whenever the parent does pass away.
Yeah. And it sucks. It's a horrible situation, isn't it? And hopefully now, by framing it with that useful idea that I'm actually parking the past, I'm having to give it meaning. If that means that you can spend an extra 10 seconds giving meaning and moments to these things that maybe you're selling. So, for example, let's say there's something that you get rid of. Take a photo of it. If it's the couch that you remember, take a photo so you can remember it. When you do sell the house, eventually when that happens, take time to walk around each room and say goodbye.
Nice idea.
Yeah. So when we acknowledge that we need to write a chapter with the past, then we are more actively able to think, well, how am I going to write that chapter and make it a little bit more memorable? So take time to say goodbye to things with photos or being with them. Say goodbye. Rather than, oh, I wish I'd done this. That's my advice. In these moments, I know it's difficult. It sucks. You've got lots going on. But if you can take moments to just sit somewhere, pause, photo, say something out loud, just take those moments, because they'll help you with the grief journey in the long run.
That's a lovely idea. I really like that about even just those things that are memory, if sort of full of memories for us, just take time to say goodbye to them. Here's a really nice, I think a really positive comment, Adam. We've got someone who's speaking about looking after mum, and actually the indication in this comment is that maybe her mum's personality has even changed slightly, perhaps because of the health issue, or perhaps even because of medication and medication that's on has sort of maybe impacting. But this is a really lovely point, and I think this speaks to what you were saying. This person says, I miss the person that she was. At the same time, I'm trying to build a relationship with the new version and dealing with those uncertainties. That's a nice thought, isn't it? To say, but there's still a person here, and I'm building a relationship with this person.
Yeah, it's like there's grief there, because there's grief for the person who is no longer there. But I love that optimistic tone of, like, you're saying hello to the new one. You're getting to know the new one, or the change one. And that's the thing, is we do have to say goodbye to parts of their personality. For whatever reason, things erode, things change, they stop doing certain things. But we've still got something we can connect with. And maybe there are sometimes new things that we can connect to. It's about seeing that. If you can, that's a wonderful approach. If you can be a bit optimistic about, well, I can still relate to what's left, or what's changed, or what's new, and just taking some pleasure or positiveness in that. But ultimately, there's going to come a point where they don't communicate, possibly, or they don't talk. And that becomes a huge final grief step, where maybe they don't contribute, or they don't talk, or they lose that ability. And that's a big one to get over. So while you've still got some interaction, make the most of it.
Yeah. And I just want to acknowledge here, Adam, I mentioned there with some of the comments, people are expressing their feelings about losses, perhaps from, you know, a year ago, 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
yes, of
We've
course.
actually
Yeah,
got people in the audience today who've had very recent losses. So
yes,
we've got a
yeah,
comment from someone who
yeah.
just lost her mum a few weeks, or his mum a
Okay,
few weeks ago. So very, very recent.
of course.
Said that they had spoken to mum about this as it was going to happen. So perhaps there's been a
Okay,
diagnosis for some time, but
yeah,
it still feels very difficult. This person says, I keep
yeah,
saying in my head, I can't believe she's gone. I
yeah,
just wondered, Adam, in that context, because that's a very fresh loss. And we do
yeah,
hope the person that put that message up today, I really hope that you found this helpful, but I hope you're also looking
yeah,
after yourself today. I just wanted
exactly.
to ask Adam, in those early weeks
Yeah,
after a loss or a bereavement,
yeah,
is there something that we could be doing just to really support our mental health and our physical health?
yeah,
We might not be ready to think about kind of going into big new changes, but is there something
yeah.
we can do in these very early days?
Yeah, so I think with the early days, again to frame it, what I've talked about, the pause button doesn't really work yet. So we kind of lack that ability to give ourselves a break. We do feel very consumed by the grief, and it is dominated by the past, what's just happened. So we can't switch it off. It's exhausting, it's draining, it's all consuming. Yeah, the self care is really important at this point. But I think a big aspect to self care at this point is your mindset.
Mm.
And society says, oh, you should be over it, get over it quickly, you shouldn't be hurting. The mindset that I want in that early stage is, whoa, a meteor has just hit your life. This is life changing. Whatever you do at this moment, do not be harsh or judge yourself. If you want to stay in bed all day, that's fine. If you're grumpy or you just want to, whatever you want to do, just the mindset needs to be, this is a tough moment in your life. You've just had something major hit you. It's going to take time. So you want to be saying to yourself, this is okay. It's going to settle down, but maybe just not yet. And if there's any tiny little baby step that I can take that helps me do a bit of self care, whatever it is, whether it's just go for a walk or just have
Mm-hmm.
a glass of red wine, any tiny little steps, just start to build that habit that I need to look after myself. So, mindset, this is big, that's okay. Can I do anything with self care that's going to help a little bit? But be realistic. The pause button will come, but initially it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
eventually, when the pause button starts to kick in, we start to get a bit of traction and control. So hang on in there, you'll get there.
Good, thank you. We're coming up to the end of our time, but I think we've
Okay,
still got a few minutes if you're
sure,
okay, Adam.
absolutely.
We have an experience here from someone who lost her daughter when her daughter was very young, just 16 years old.
Okay,
Had some significant health issues, but passed away
yeah,
in September 24, so
yeah, yeah,
relatively recently. And
yeah.
an interesting comment that this person has added is that she feels that she lost her purpose when her daughter died, because that would been
I get
obviously
that.
such a
I
close
get that.
close relationship.
Of course,
She
of
also
course.
said, I've got friends, but I feel completely alone and people
Yeah,
have drifted away. Is that often something that can happen
yeah,
at that point
yeah,
of a loss, that other people just, is that
yeah.
because they feel awkward, they don't know what to do, that your life has changed dramatically and they don't know how to deal with it
Yeah.
themselves?
She highlighted it there. It's the loss of purpose, the loss of meaning, because you raised a child for 16 years, and to have that child die completely derails. You know,
Yeah.
people who become carers and then lose their identity. This is a different level. This is a
Yeah.
different, level of raising a child and then losing. That's hard. That is a really harsh adaptation to change. And a big part of that job is readjusting your social world. And what often happens is other people people who maybe are still parents, obviously, you can't connect with them. You can't, you just don't know how to relate to them. So often these kind of scenarios require a complete reset of who you are socially and who you connect with. And sometimes finding a cohort of people who've shared something similar, that can be comforting, or it might not be. There's no right or wrong way here, but sometimes that can be helpful. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of grief work, and it comes under this job. And
Mm.
and and readjusting to something, readjusting to being a non-parent of that 16-year-old is a massive transition, and it'll take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it will never feel perfect or wonderful or as good as it was. You've got to do the past and the future. It's acknowledging the 16 years that you had and celebrating that, and shouting about that and doing everything you can to stay connected to it. But it's also about acknowledging your new future and building that in a way that allows you to do that whilst maybe never forgetting the past and keeping that alive and shouting about it. You're doing two jobs. It's back to those two jobs. So I'm staying with that model because that's what I've taught you.
Adam, what a wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for responding. We have many more comments, and unfortunately just time has got away from us. So for those of you who commented today, I want to genuinely say thank you so much. You poured out your hearts to us, and we send our hearts back to you. We really hope that you find this session helpful. This session has been recorded. It's going to be available to rewatch. So if you find some of it a little bit difficult and you just needed to move out of the room for a moment, feel free, of course, at any point to come back and rewatch on our website in a couple of days. And Adam's going to send me the slides. So I think Becky has already put my email address into the Q&A. Send me an email if you'd like a copy of those slides. For now, all that remains is for me to say an enormous thank you again to Adam and, of course, to all of the team at Cruse Bereavement. Your website address is also in the Q&A if people want to go on to just have a chat with you guys direct. And everybody look after yourselves this afternoon. So this was the last session of our Carers Week presentations for today, so please do take care of yourselves this afternoon. That might have been an emotional presentation for you, so take care, and we will see you again through the remainder of the week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.